we've detailed some of the challenges that come about with doing business in Africa, but Africa is also a very unique place where there is serious opportunity for businesses to make money. What about South Africa specifically, and then Africa as a bigger continent, is attractive to investments from SMEs?
Yeah, I mean, Africa makes up something like 26% of our business, so it's a really important. South Africa is a really important market for us. But I think South Africa's going through some growing pains right now. They need to work out who they want to be within Africa. So we see sort of Nigeria, Tanzania, Ghana's, Uganda's, Rwanda's, Ethiopia definitely. Some of those markets growing at a far faster rate than perhaps South Africa is, and you see that in the GDP numbers too. So, and I think that's for a number of reasons. Historically, South Africa was touted as a gateway to Africa. I'm not so sure that's still true. Primarily based on the fact that, historically, one of the few ways you could get into Africa was through South Africa, but now the Middle Eastern carriers fly direct into most of those markets. So if you're an exporter or an importer coming into Africa, it's far easier to connect direct rather than necessarily going through South Africa. So I think, and South Africa, as I said, is a very important market for us, but a very important market for Africa. But it needs to work out, in my humble opinion, what does it want to be? Does it want to be a service sector, manufacturing sector? Where does it want to play? I think if it identifies that and goes fully focused on it, it can still sit very predominantly and prominently in Africa.
I suppose South Africa is behaving like the typical 20-year-old we are, and
yeah, I think so.
We're in a very interesting space.
Much more mature market, much more mature. I mean, if you I was in Rwanda a few months ago, which is an amazing country, and in 20 years has gone from the horrible environment it was in to a really progressive market today, who's really focused on being a very important player in East Africa going forward. And you could clearly see that they intend to do that, and I think they're taking the right steps to do so. But they're a very small country coming from a very embryonic environment, and therefore for them to make accelerated change is probably far easier. South Africa, with its history and size and maturity, is in a different place. But I think critically, it's important it works out what roles it want to play in Africa. But to your question, the rest of Africa, I think all of Africa is really exciting. As we just talked about, the second fastest growing region in the world. You've got GDPs of 7, 9, 10, 11% growth. You've got significant interest from multinationals around the world around what do they do in Africa, how do they capitalise on the ever-growing middle class and consumer spend. Nigeria is a great example of that, where you've got millions of people sort of having a significant amount of money that they want to spend on branded products. So a lot of companies working out how they play in those space, and many other markets besides. So I think the overarching story of Africa Rising is absolutely true. It's a good one. Certainly we see that. It was really interesting. I was at the World Economic Forum recently, and someone asked a reporter asked a question of a minister around Africa Rising, and his response was, I can't wait to say that rather than say Africa Rising, say Africa has risen. And I think that's a really good sort of point, which is there are lots of promising and positive signs, but still a lot of challenges to sort out, whether it be infrastructure or unemployment or education or other areas. But it will fulfill its destiny, no question.